Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I will indeed be playing the Dwarves, and I'm going to be facing off against the Empire, so definitely a fun matchup. And thankfully for me, I do have this lovely tree line right here, which is going to be great at kind of mitigating the damage I'm going to take from these great cannons here. Because as you guys know, great cannons, when you're playing against them as the Dwarves, is a very, very miserable matchup in my opinion. So thankfully I do have that kind of natural terrain. So as far as my army goes, I have a front line of Dwarf Warriors who will be pretty good at dealing with low-tier Empire infantry. They have really good stats, especially when supported by the Rune Lord and Runesmiths. Again, their base stats are really good. 38 melee defense for how much are you paying? Like 475? That's a really, really good deal. And again, they do have charged defense against large foes. There's a multitude of different strategies with Empire. Some people will just go heavy on cannons and kind of just wear you down while you march and then punish you with greatswords. There's so many different builds, but these guys are a very dynamic unit for how much you're paying and are very, very good. I also have the Grumbling Guard back here. I have two Longbeards with great weapons, some more Dwarf Warriors here, and some more Dwarf Warriors here. So just a lot of Dwarf Warriors who I'm going to try and get the maximum value out of with the Rune Lord. And you can kind of go a little bit light on the armor piercing when you're playing as Dwarves against Empire if you are bringing the Rune Lord, because if you're effective at using the Master Rune of Wrath and Rune on greatswords and other high value targets like that, you don't really need a ton of armor piercing. That extra damage really will give these guys the kick they need to win that battle. In the back, I do have a group of Slayers because I did decide to bring two cannons, which I usually don't against the Empire because they can simply outrange you, and it's a tough situation. And I don't like to turtle either, but I bring a group of Slayers simply to protect these guys. So I usually park Slayers behind them and just kind of, if he brings, any flying units, the Slayers will be pretty good at putting them down. So, but I do have the two cannons, the Rune Lord, two Runesmiths, and a Thane. So that's it for my army. So my opponent, he has a great position right now, though. Aside from this kind of natural terrain I have protecting me, he's got some great swords up here. So a whole line of great swords, which is pretty smart. And he does have Sigmar's Sons, which are a pretty good unit. They're unbreakable, and I think they're worth bringing in a lot of different matchups. They do have 43 melee attack, which is really good, and 43 melee defense. 30 weapon strength, so it's just slightly less than the greatswords, I think, without the armor piercing, but they are unbreakable, which is pretty huge. So definitely a very cool unit. He has two cannons kind of postured up. He has this lovely high ground angle, so if he can get the arc over the trees, which he will in the beginning, but once they get closer, it'll be a little harder to make contact there. He has the silver bullets up here, which are a very cool unit. It looks like he has the Amber Wizard. He has a General of the Empire, so in favor of kind of getting a flying air force, he just brought more greatswords and kind of a stronger core of units. That's one of the things. You do see a lot of people do that. They'll just, bring, not necessarily non-mounted units, but they'll just, bring their lords on, basic low-tier horses and things like that to kind of allow them to get a few more infantry units. So he does have an Amber Wizard here with the Transformation of Kadan, Flock of Doom, both of which are good. And he also has a Witch Hunter here, and I think he has a second Witch Hunter. So, yeah, he has two of those. So I'm definitely going to be getting accused. And Accusation, using it on the Rune Lord is pretty good. It's not going to absolutely destroy him like it would some other lords, but it's going to be, definitely something I have to watch out for this battle. And I don't have a lot of ways to kind of just punch through his front line and get to those guys, so we will see how it goes. One issue I've kind of encountered with Witch Hunters is they do get obstructed quite easily, kind of their line of sight, and same with, any essentially powder unit or gunpowder unit, is that you really have to position them. But thankfully he does have this hill, so if he kind of postures them up here on the top, he should be able to shoot down into this kind of area I have to march through. So anyways, let's go ahead and look here. So you can see some of the cannons are coming, but now that I'm here, some are penetrating the tree line, and I am returning fire through the trees. I don't really have much of a choice here, but some are coming through, and unfortunately he is making some good contact with the Grumbling Guard here. You can see a few Slayers got caught in the crossfire here, so these poor Dwarves are kind of laid to rest in this awful swamp here, so definitely not the best situation. And I quickly realized that he didn't really have any Air Force units or cav, unless he had some hidden up in the trees, which would have really sucked if he had come around, but I kind of just put my marbles in the fact that he didn't, and I decided to bring my Slayers. So I am returning fire, and I'm making some okay contact. You can see I'm hitting these greatswords here and there, but my opponent's definitely getting the better of me in the cannon exchange, so very, very well played there. He has positioned the silver bullets in a nice little slope right here. I think they should have been a little higher up, and it looks like he is repositioning them there. So you can see the Witch Hunters are also posturing up, getting ready for the battle as the Dwarves march through the forest. And he actually did have a Manticore here. So that's right. So I did send the Slayers back to the cannons to defend them because I didn't want to give up, 1,600 resources just for one summoned Manticore. Those Slayers will definitely do a good job putting the Manticore down, because Manticores have really low armor and Slayers have super high damage and an anti-large bonus. So they're going to hit this guy like a truck, hopefully. So, but still, even if I were, playing in the Empire player's position, I might have sent the Manticore in just to disrupt the cannons, or at least, feigned back here and then flown back to the front line, which is probably what he'll end up doing, to be honest. So my cannons are actually doing a bit of damage. You can see these greatswords have taken some HP damage, so is this group here, so definitely paying for themselves. A lot of builds I've been doing lately actually haven't been using any cannons, range units at all. I've just been doing these massive dwarf infantry blobs with just tons of great, great weapons and dwarf warriors mixed with runesmiths to kind of serve as your ranged threat. But Anyways, I am taking the missile fire here, but thankfully these guys are shielded, so it's not the worst situation. The silver bullets did get a few nice volleys off, but once I get right up into the face of these greatswords, I don't have to worry as much, and I don't have any ranged units for him to pick off in the back. Everything is just all business here. This is the all business dwarf army. You can see the warriors of Dragonfire Pass are marching up the hill, and they're ready to get down and dirty with these greatswords. So I do use Rune of Wrath and Rune on Sigmar's Sons over here, and that does a lot of damage. That's just the regular one, so I was pretty happy about that. But he is getting this nice downhill charge here, which is going to be pretty bad, and I tried and countercharge, but again, these guys are going to get probably the better of the situation here. These greatswords are obviously meant to take out these types of armored units. So, but again, I do have the support of the Rune of Wrath and Rune here. I've been using it on every unit I essentially can, every chance I get, but my opponent does use Weisson's Wild Form on his front line, so these are going to be some pretty darn scary greatswords here. The Dwarf Warriors are also getting the Master Rune Negation, which is really good. 44 damage resistance, essentially cutting the damage of the greatswords in half is going to be really big. You can see the Rune Lords in here. Things are going relatively well. Over here, Sigmar's Sons are fighting some Dwarf Warriors, and they do have, pretty good stats. But they don't have the armor piercing, so it's not going to be as bad. And I do have a Runesmith over here helping out as well, so it's definitely a bit of a cockfight, to say the least. But the Grumbling Guard kind of have gotten around the flanks over here, which is really nice, because when they can kind of work down from the side inward, that's a really good situation, because then they're just going to be fighting some periphery units instead of a big cluster. And you can see there, my opponent retaliates with that kind of tactic by using the Flock of Doom there, which did a little bit of damage, but not as much as you would think. The Rune Lord in here is doing pretty good. He does sometimes get a little overzealous, just something if you attack order him into greatsword. Sometimes he'll march his kind of pimp my ride cart up into the forces, and it can be a little bit dangerous. But the General of the Empire definitely is in a little bit of a scary position. He does have the Grumbling Guard here, as well as a Thane who's been jump kicking him, and the Rune Lord here is doing pretty good. You can see that's what I'm talking about. He'll kind of charge in like Manticore or something like that, but those cannons are coming right into my guy's face. But thankfully I'm able to detach a group of Dwarf Warriors, as I did win that flank, and these Dwarf Warriors are going to get in there. And I love how they lead with jump kicks. Like, of all the things they could do, like a shield bash or anything, they'd go in with a flying jump kick or a headbutt. So definitely very stylish there. But you can see the General of the Empire is taking a bit of a beating. And these greatswords definitely, took a beating from these just standard Dwarf Warriors with great weapons who were supported by the Rune of Wrath and Rune. I did use the Master Rune on that group there, which is really, really effective. So these greatswords are definitely not having the best of time, and I know they did get nerfed recently. I think it was an armor nerf, was it? So that definitely makes the Dwarf Warriors a little better against them. Still not, ideal by any means, but things are going relatively well. So the Witch Hunters up here have just been taking their pot shots. They were shooting at my Rune Lord for a little while, and you can see though, again, just having them fire into the Dwarf Warriors isn't the best situation, because they're only going to hit one at a time essentially. But the Silver Bullets up here are also just teeing off on my Dwarf Warriors. So I did switch my cannon fire to these guys. I wanted to kind of put them down a little bit. Sorry I didn't get a ton of focus back here, but my Slayers were able to fend off the Manticore, but at a great cost. And my cannons are back online now, so I was very happy that I could kind of salvage those resources. And you can see this is the same Manticore, which he's using to kind of pick off some of my fleeing units here, so very well played there. But the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass will not go quietly into that good night, and they'll definitely put a beat down, and they might even be able to rattle off this Manticore, so very awesome situation there. So a lot of the Empire forces have kind of routed off here. They got some great swords still fighting against some Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. But they'll actually probably win this engagement for sure. And over here in the wing, you can see Sigmar's Sons were able to win against the Dwarf Warriors, even though the Runesmith was there. But he's still putting up a fight. He's using the Rune of Wrath and Rune on these guys, just going in deep. And they are unbreakable, and he's still eager despite it all. So he'll probably end up winning that engagement there. Over here, I did send a group of Dwarf Warriors to disrupt the cannons, but my opponent did wisely pull his Lord back to kind of help out, and he's able to isolate them. And you can see Davy Crockett is here with his with no shirt on, just going ham on these dwarves. So still, there's a lot of threats left on the battlefield, even though I did win that primary kind of infantry engagement. I'm very tattered. I have some Longbeards here, I have some Dwarf Warriors here, a Rune Lord who's in okay shape, and I do have my cannon kind of supporting. And I keep forgetting about these darn Witch Hunters. They're so easy to forget. They kind of just stand off and on the wings, and you don't think much about them. So I did want to collapse in these cannons because they were just teeing off my Rune Lord, making some good contact. So that was a very tough situation. And you can see my opponent using Accusation there, and it's doing a lot of HP damage actually. There's another 100 HP gone just with one tick, and it's continuing to go. So I was definitely taking a beating from that, but I kind of figured it would be more important to get rid of these. And I do use a Master Rune of Wrath and Rune on this, which probably wasn't the best use of it, but there weren't really any kind of big groups of infantry left to use it on. Perhaps I could have used it on, I don't know. It's not very good against lords and things like that, so I did use it. I wanted to kind of break these guys and get them off the battlefield, but it really wasn't that great on those, so I probably should have done that and maybe used it on something else. So this is kind of the final showdown. Thankfully, the Slayers came back from the back line, are able to come in with their jump kicks and are getting on this Empire, General of the Empire here, but he healed up with his potion. My opponent, very, very well played. I came in to kind of jump him, and he waited till everything was clustered up, and then he used the Flock of Doom, but Thankfully, the Slayers coming in were able to break that Manticore, and his General of the Empire is now shaken. He's surrounded by Slayers and all kinds of angry dwarves, so definitely not a good situation for everyone being those guys trying to settle their grudges. So this Rune Lord here is still confident despite the fact that he's at about 20% HP, if even. And, you know, these cannons, I did send a Thane over who's able to get in there and shield bash, and he actually shield bashed that guy's head off, so definitely a good situation for me. And these cannons, yeah, they're down to 2 models, and they're not firing anymore, so very, very good there. But he still does have Davy Crockett over here, who's kind of been flying under the radar. And I did send some Warriors of Dragonfire Pass to kind of go after this Witch Hunter over here, but you know, you can't oh yeah, he's another guy who likes to throw straight kicks. He doesn't do jump kicks, but he's the guy who does the straight kicks. But he has a pretty good armor-piercing missiles, but he still has over 300 weapon strength. So, you know, again, I underestimated him a little bit. But I'd still rather have these guys kind of, you know, fighting him than having the Witch Hunter shooting at my Lord with his 360 armor-piercing missile damage. So they're still fighting, and again, these regiments are renowned. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are so good. You can see, I think my cannons were shooting here as well. But Davy Crockett's going to come in here, so he's got a little nice squad here. And also, the General of the Empire took a beating, had to rout off. This Witch Hunter got his butt kicked by the Thane. So I did have a Thane on him, kind of laying the smackdown earlier. And you can see the Dwarfs kind of came out of this little battle victorious, but they're still marching on, and it is by no means over. If you guys look at the power bar, it's still really close, and he has some very healthy heroic units. So thankfully for me, I think Accusation was on cooldown, and I was actually using the Master Rune and Wrath of Rune on his General, trying to rout him off because his HP was so darn low, and it ticks a little bit. I mean, it's pretty bad against you know, single heroic units, but the Slayers are getting in there, and thankfully they're able to do a little bit of damage. He's so close he's on steady right now, and I believe he used Stand Your Ground. If he had it, he might have routed off the battlefield. So you can see those dwarves there are able to catch him, and my opponent tried to cycle charge to kind of finish off this Runesmith, which isn't a bad idea, but at the same time, he lets the Slayers get around him, which is tough. So this Witch Hunter also got, you know, hammered by the Rune Lord, and over here this Thane was able to kill that other Witch Hunter. I think he did, yeah. So he had a bad time against the Thane there. Definitely not a favorable matchup. So I think that's pretty much it. Pretty close battle. He had some silver bullets kind of running around here. Most of my forces are pretty darn low, but I still do have those cannons with a lot of ammo. Just most of the battle they're obstructed. This was... I probably should have looked at the map before, and I probably wouldn't have brought the cannons, but they still applied some good pressure and were able to do some work for me. But, you know, again, if I didn't bring those cannons, I could have brought like another 3 or 4 groups of infantry, which I think would have been a little bit better. So, yeah, just my 2 cents, though. So very well played game to my opponent there, so let's go ahead and take a look here. So the Great Swords did pretty good. Cannons also got racked up quite a few kills. But, you know, the Silver Bullets and the Witch Hunters, I don't know how I feel about them. I mean, they were accusing, but I think if my opponent had 2 Empire Captains, you know, kind of in the front line supporting those Great Swords, because the Great Swords were, you know, they were doing well, but they didn't really have any heroic support. If he had like 2 Empire Captains in there, you know, fighting against my Thane and laying the smacks on my Runesmith, I think he could have won. It's hard to say in retrospect because I don't know how effective the accusation was. Maybe my Rune Lord would have been at full health without these guys. So, again, just, you know, kind of looking back on it. The Silver Bullets did okay. They were obstructed for a lot of the battle and were able to kind of be shut down by a group of Dwarf Warriors. Also, I think maybe cutting a cannon and bringing like a single group of Cav, even one really low-tier group of Empire Knights can just cause a massive headache for the Dwarves, especially when the Dwarves have to advance, because then they're kind of, you know, they're not braced and they're just, you know, kind of vulnerable in many areas. So anyways, very well played to my opponent. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that Dwarf cast. Have an excellent night, and take care.